I'm Elizabeth Doran, President and CEO of North Carolina Theater, which has been proudly producing professional theater and education programming in Raleigh for over 37 years. On behalf of all of us at North Carolina Theater, welcome to All In, Community Conversations, presented by PNC. All In Community Conversations is a digital series of community-led dialogues that examine the themes of our shows that tie to the hopes, ambitions, and challenges of our shared North Carolina community. All In is connected directly with All In, North Carolina Theater's community engagement vision, which we established in 2017. Through All In, we aim to be a source of equitable access to theatrical programming, offering enrichment and educational opportunities for all. Today's episode of All In Community Conversations takes an intimate approach to our intimate production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Lady Day dives deep into the life and music of the iconic jazz legend Billie Holiday. Our production features the talented star of television and the stage, Angela Robinson, playing Billie Holiday. Nigel Robinson beautifully portrays Miss Holiday's piano accompanist. Along with musicians playing bass and drums, these artists will transport us all back in time to an evening of song and memories with Billie Holiday. Today, we are honored to bring you a renowned artist from our own local North Carolina community who will interview a legendary jazz artist who is deeply connected to Billie Holiday and who herself has an incredible story we are excited to share. Yolanda Raven is a fantastic star, recording artist, and performer who lives right here in the Triangle region. In today's episode, Yolanda will be interviewing Corky Hale Stoller. Corky Hale Stoller is a devoted activist, philanthropist, Broadway producer, and music lover, and she is also a brilliant jazz musician. Corky was Billie Holiday's piano accompanist. She toured with Ms. Holiday for many years and also played for greats like Nina Simone, Frank Sinatra, and so many more. When Corky puts up a show in one of her favorite Los Angeles jazz clubs, it sells out quick, and for those lucky enough to attend, they experience the artistry, personality, wisdom, and love of life that make Corky Hale Stoller so very special. With us today is our friend and jazz expert, David Linton. David started out right here in Raleigh as a student at Shaw University, a community partner at NCT. Starting out in radio at Shaw, David is a radio and music industry veteran and has played a key role in the careers of numerous iconic music artists. David, thank you for joining us. Can you give us some perspective on Corky Hale Stoller and the time and space in jazz that she shared with Billie Holiday?
Hello, my name is David Linton, Program Director of WCLK, Atlanta's jazz station. I'm also a 1980 graduate of Shaw University. And it's great for me to have an opportunity to speak to you a little bit about Billie Holiday, one of the most successful jazz singers of our lifetime. Born and known as Eleanor Fagan, known to the world as Billie Holiday, as I said, she was one of the most successful jazz singers during her reign and also one of the highest paid. The way the woman we call Lady Day, a name that was given to her by her band member Les Young, the way she could take a lyric and breathe life into it was uncanny and was something the world hadn't heard before and maybe not since. Oh yes, there were great singers now of her time like Ella, Sarah, and Lena, but there was only one Billie Holiday. She's been portrayed on film and stage more than any other singer. Who could forget Diana Ross's portrayal in Lady Sings the Blues? Or Audra Day's recent performance in the United States versus Billie Holiday, which garnered her an Academy Award nomination, and she took home the Golden Globe for Best Actress. Now, the North Carolina Theater is presenting a production on the life of Billie Holiday, and I'm sure it's going to be something that you're going to enjoy, and you're going to learn something about this fantastic singer we call Billie Holiday. One might wonder, what was the fascination with Billie Holiday? Well, she represents so many aspects of American life as an African American, a woman, and a walking business enterprise, all during a time in American history when women and African Americans were not guarded as equal citizens or had the same rights to the American dream. If she lived today, she would be the poster child, for the Me Too women's movement due to the abuse she endured at the hands of the men whom she was romantically involved or who worked to propel her career. So much is often focused on her challenges with substance abuse, depicting her as a tragic figure who had it all and lost it. Yet, Billie Holiday was so much more. She was a civil and human rights activist, using her celebrity to bring attention to the plight of African Americans at a time in American history when her color made her a target for so many of society's misgivings. Today, she would be viewed as a victim of sexual, mental, racial, and gender abuse. However, in her time, she would be viewed as a woman who squandered a great opportunity. However, through it all, Billie Holiday became an icon of American music and a voice for the voiceless, should we say, even while enduring some of the harshest treatment you could think of, and her ability to escape due to her celebrity. Now, she could perform before white audiences as a member of Artie Shaw and Benny Goodman's band, yet she had to sleep on the bus because she was denied hotel accommodations due to the color of her skin. In fact, there were times when she was asked to darken her skin because it would be bad for a white band to have a black singer. They wanted her to lighten her skin tone. Well, one can only imagine what that does to the psychological and self-esteem of an individual. Yet, Billie found the strength or the courage, even if it was in a pill, bottle, or drug. See, I don't see her as a tragic figure, but a woman who played the hand she was dealt. She used her voice to reflect the love, pain, and hurt of not only herself when she sang a song like My Man, but an entire race when she addressed the lynching of Black men in the song Strange Fruit. Her performance is one for the ages as she emotes the pain, the hurt, and even bewilderment felt by scores of Black men and women when lynching was almost a sport for those who saw Black lives as less than human. On what would have been her 105th birthday, one of the few musicians and women to play with Billie, Corky Hale, performed a tribute to this American music icon. Corky played with Billie on several recordings and on the TV show Stars of Jazz. No matter what, Billie Holiday will always be remembered as a unique singer who embodied the best of jazz vocalists, a performer who, despite her personal trials and challenges, always delivered. She died too young, she lived too old, and her legendary status will endure forever. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that insight. Now, to provide context with our production, we've invited our director and music director, Jarvis Antonio Green, to speak with us about our production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. And then we'll get things started with Yolanda and Corky.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jarvis Green. I am the director for the upcoming production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill at North Carolina Theater. What's so special about this piece is that it is set in a bar, right? We all know Billie Holiday. We love her work. We love her voice. But what's interesting about this piece is that it is set in a bar, and it's her last concert before she died. And what's interesting, too, is that we learn so much about her life and who she was as an artist and all the many things that she had to endure during such a difficult time in our history. I think you'll laugh, you will cry, and you will want to know more about her life. So please come join us November 4th through the 14th here at North Carolina Theater for Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill.
Hi, everybody. I am Yolanda Raven. I am so excited to be here today. I am a North Carolina international recording artist, an equity actor, a theater producer, and I get the pleasure of introducing you all to an amazing jazz harpist. She is also a pianist, a flutist. She is all that in a bag of chips. Miss Corky Hale is here today, and I want to bring her on. I wanted to introduce you first as a jazz harpist because it's just an amazing instrument. You were doing it at 7 years old with much older ladies. And so give me the honor of giving you that or giving the audience, I should say, that information. And then we're going to go talk about Billie Holiday, and then we'll talk about what you're doing today. Will that work?
Why you want to know first of all, I'm a farm girl. Let's start with that. People say, what? I am from a small town on the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and I am a real farm girl. Well, and that's not really true. I'm not really, because I never worked in the fields, but people think I'm sophisticated or something. No way, folks. I really grew up.
You know what? Some of our best artists come from people who are just
From
plain
small
simple.
towns.
In small towns. So listen, I know that you have played and you've recorded with some of the greats, like everyone from Frank Sinatra to Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole,
Barbra Streisand.
Yes, exactly. Wait a minute. Also, right here in North Carolina's Nina Simone and Roberta Flack.
Nina Simone. Let me tell you a little thing about Nina Simone. Many years ago, when I lived in New York, what is that, 50 years ago, 40 years ago?
Uh-huh.
A conductor called and he said, I've written a thing for you and Nina Simone. We're doing, I forgot what the song was. He said, but the intro is all you playing harp with Nina Simone. And I said, well, okay, all right. Meanwhile, he called up later in a panic. He said, oh, Nina's throwing a fit, one of her fits. She won't come into the studios. He said, can you sing this whole thing that I wrote for her? I said, no, I'm not going to sing the whole thing you wrote for Nina Simone. And that was the end of that.
How did you get started?
How did I get started? Okay, in this little town in Illinois.
Okay.
I guess I went to the piano when I was about 3 or 5 and started playing. And how did I get to the harp? I was at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but how did I get on a harp?
No, it's how did you get started in the music business?
Well, no, she just said, but how did I get to the harp?
Oh.
And how did I get to the harp?
So how did you get started in the business? And I do know, but Miss Corky, I do know because I've read your book that you started on the harp, right? And you started at a very young age.
Well, that's true. And anyway, let's see. Then I wound up at UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the sorority sisters, which I love that because if there was ever anybody that was not a sorority, I joined a sorority and I think I lasted about 5 minutes. I couldn't stand those girls. Oh, I don't want her in the sorority because I don't like the way she wears her hair. I don't like the clothes that she wears. Oh, that's all. Talk about a sorority girl, boy. Anyway, so one of the girls there said her dad produces a show called The Hollywood Cavalcade on local Channel 5. They said, why don't you go down and let them hear you play or do something? So we got some fraternity boys to load the harp on a truck. And we went down to the station and they said, yeah, we'll put you on. So they hired me to play harp. And that was it. I was on the show every week. And then Freddie Martin had the band at the hotel in Las Vegas, and he saw me and he heard me singing. My first job was actually at the Coconut Grove, which is a great orchestra, Eddie Bergman, and they hired me to play the harp. But then they said, "Oh, you play the flute too? Why don't you play flute on the Latin things?" And then they said, "Oh, wow, you're a piano player." Meanwhile, the guy that was playing intermission piano, that's the only guy that ever slapped me, that hit me.
I read that in your book.
Angry.
I read
that. Can we show the book? Where's the book?
Yes, we can. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's the book. Okay. I do love the book.
It's an amazing book because it's so personal.
Got everybody in it. And you know, I'm a fiend for Barbra Streisand. I mean, I think she's the greatest singer. She's the only one whose picture is not on the cover. For some reason, her manager, I think, was mad I wouldn't go out with him. Oh, I shouldn't say it. But they wouldn't give me a picture of Barbara to put on the cover. But we got everybody else on the cover.
And you know what that everybody else includes is Billie Holiday. So you have had the honor of being the only woman, right, to have accompanied Billie Holiday on the piano.
That is
true. How did you come to work with her?
Well, the guy with the band at the Dunes in Las Vegas heard me singing on the radio, and he came to I was at the orchestra at the Coconut Grove here, which was the most famous club, and he saw me, and liked what he heard and everything. And he said, I would like you to join my band at the Dunes Hotel in Las Vegas. I said, oh, Las Vegas was so glamorous in those days. So I went off. And this was the first day of the rehearsal. And he said, they've just booked somebody for tonight for the opening show. And in walked Billie Holiday. Now, I had long, kind of blonde, very blonde hair. And she looked over at the piano and she said, who's this chick at the piano? Went, oh. And she threw her music onto the piano. And it's like a movie. We played our first song and she said, honey, you is my little girl. And that was it.
Wow. So do you remember what the first song was?
I don't remember where I was last week. Are you kidding? I got so much going on in my life. Really.
Okay, so tell me
now.
what's your favorite memory of working with Billie Holiday?
My favorite memory, God, was when she asked me to go on a tour with her. And she said, honey, we're going off to where did she say? Denise, where'd she say we were going off to?
Asia.
Where?
Korea or Japan or China.
I don't know, somewhere. And I said, honey, I can't. I'm too involved here. I did not go on tour with her. Also, I was kind of scared of her husband at that time. And, he's not alive, so I can say anything I want. But he was kind of rough. And he was rough with her. And that's about it. So I didn't go on tour with her, and that was it.
But you did get a chance to play with her even more, though.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, we played at the hotel. We did shows at the hotel. And she was wonderful to me. And
Jazz City.
What about Jazz City?
You played Jazz City here in LA.
Oh, okay. I have, Denise knows everything about me and everything else. Denise is a genius. Anyway,
so for the people who are listening to us, there is a wonderful woman named Denise who's with you.
That's my assistant. She's
excellent. I just wanted to recognize that Denise is here in the room.
When I talk about Denise, okay, she's waving to me now from in the office. Okay.
I was reading
where
your
did
book.
we leave off? We were
talking about your favorite memory of you and Billie Holiday.
Okay. Now,
and
two different guys through the years called me. We're doing pictures with Billie. Neither one of them called me, which is very interesting because I am the only woman that ever sat and talked to her. Neither one of them. And I love this last movie with Eddie Generals did. And what's her name?
Andra Day.
She should have gotten the Academy Award. I thought she was fabulous.
She was amazing.
I haven't met her. I want to meet her. Andra, in case you watch this, please, I want to meet you. Okay.
And let me tell you, though, I read that you met with Audra McDonald before she...
Oh, well, that was a whole thing. She came out and, we became friendly. She's a wonderful, fabulous woman. And what else? Let's see. I got so much in my head that I want to tell. Where shall I start?
Well, the biggest thing I want the audience to hear is the fact that we're talking to someone who worked firsthand with Billie Holiday, the Billie Holiday.
I want to know about what it was like, the real story, because I did sit in Billie's room, in her dressing room, and I'm practically brokenhearted. She had a terrible life. Her parents, I think, had her when they were teenagers, and she was born in Philadelphia. And she had a terrible life. Well, Billie only wanted, this is the most important thing if you write anything about Billie Holiday. There was only one major thing she wanted in her lifetime, and it never happened. And that was to have a baby. So we often talked about that.
Did you all talk about that? Was it the time on the road that kept her from that, or just everything else that was going on in her life?
I don't know. I guess the wrong guys, whatever. I can't. That's a good question. Why did she never have a baby? But that broke her heart. She wanted a baby desperately, and that's the saddest thing ever.
But one of the things that Billie Holiday is known for is usually being intoxicated, right? But one of the things you wrote in your book, which I think is
intoxicated,
really cool,
they all said she was a junkie. She was always stoned.
That's true. But in your book,
drinking that much.
Exactly. Your book talks the opposite. And again, we're talking firsthand to someone who actually worked with her. And I remember I read where you said, when she was singing, she was present. She was, not necessarily
drunk. If we
right.
went out. No, she did. She wasn't stoned and stumbled around. No,
Right.
absolutely not. As a matter of
Right.
fact, she was not much of a drinker.
Right. Right.
So what else are
Yeah.
we saying?
No, I think that's wonderful. I was just again intrigued about. It looks like your relationship with her was about roughly 3 or 4 years that you were with Billie Holiday. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
If
that's a
there was
long
something,
time ago. It's so hard for me to remember, as I say, where I was last week because I'm working on so much.
I understand. I completely understand. If you had something to say to Billie Holiday today, if you could
I
tell
would
her
say,
something today,
I
what would you
would
tell
say, I was so happy to work with you, and I still feel bad. And if I had a chance, I would help you at this point have a baby.
her?
That's what I would say to her. A lovely woman, and she had an unfortunate life. And because God has been so good to me. I've had this wonderful life, and I feel sorry for somebody that hasn't had all the opportunities I had, which boy, did I have.
Well, so let's talk about that because you had the opportunity to play with Billie, and she is known as one of the greatest jazz singers of our time, right? And I'm just curious, how do you think, or what do you think of her influence, and how it can be seen
On
today?
various singers now, tremendous. They all think, they all say, "Oh yeah, I love, I love Billie Holiday," and they all seem to think that, they're going to sound like Billie. But so what can I say?
Well,
Uh,
again,
I think Andra Day is wonderful, and I think they haven't given her enough credit. And I feel she was up for the Academy Award. I thought she was wonderful.
well, I will say this, with Andra Day, with Audra McDonald, our own Angela Robinson in North Carolina Theater, who is going to be playing the role of Billie Holiday in the upcoming performance
Oh, I
of.
didn't know that.
I'm just
Now I
curious.
would come down. I would come down to the show, except that I have one major problem.
What's
I
that?
hate airplanes.
Oh.
I hate airplanes. And
So every time you were playing with Billie Holiday, does that mean you always traveled on the bus and never flew? You never flew anywhere?
exactly, we didn't fly anywhere, and I don't fly with anybody. Even when are you ready for this? Liberace. I wouldn't go on the planes with Liberace, the nicest Swiss man there ever was. Incidentally, I have to throw
Listen,
that in. He was
when
a darling.
I was reading your book, and I read that he came to you and asked you to play with them, and then you started buying shoes, and he just introduced you to your new hairstyle. He was
No,
life.
I don't know what he did, but anyway, he was a lovely, lovely guy. Very sweet guy. Very sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
So,
so
but I have a question for you
okay.
about just social activism. Was
All
was
right.
Billie Holiday a big social activist when you
No,
were working?
no, I don't. That's one of the questions that was submitted to me. Was she an activist? I don't think she even knew what the word meant. No, she was just very sweet, and she was a wonderful singer, and she helped people as much as she could, and she was kind to the people that worked with her, accompanists and me, and in the hotels and everything. She was a nice woman. I will say that she was a sweet woman.
And one of the reasons why I asked that question is because, especially in some of the recent books that have come out about Billie Holiday, and the fact that she was incarcerated and lost her license to perform
Horrible,
because of drugs and
terrible.
alcohol, there seemed to be a lot of politics behind all of
Of
that
course
happening
there was.
against her.
They did it all against her. She was a figure. Yeah, she was famous. Yeah, let's get her. And she's black and she's a woman, and yeah, we can go after her.
Before we leave Billie Holiday,
Okay.
if you don't mind, I want to go back because there was something that you wrote in your book, and I want to
Yeah.
ask you about.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that her existence needed drugs and alcohol as an escape.
Who did?
You said that
Billie?
Billie Holiday's existence needed drugs and alcohol as an escape.
But I didn't say alcohol because really, did I say that? Because she was not that much of a drinker. Anyway,
Yeah,
maybe
but listen,
I
Corky,
said
what you
that in the book.
remember, yes,
Escape.
but
Well, she escaped obviously from a terrible, sad life.
yes, but In your experience with her, with Billie Holiday performing, did you ever hear her mess up?
No, I can't say that I did. No, remember, we're talking over 50 years ago. I can't remember
I
where I
know,
was
I
last
know,
week.
I know, I
I don't
know, I know,
not
I know. But
remember
but
ever
Corky,
forgetting or doing anything and me saying, Billy, we got to go over that again. You goofed on that. I do not remember any of
do
that.
you ever remember when she was extremely happy? A moment when she was extremely happy.
Oh, what a great question. I would have to think about that.
Hmm.
No, I can't think of when she was extremely happy. And I'm talking about the guys that she was married to or going out with, or the night.
What about
No,
when you talked to her about motherhood? Did you find joy in her voice when she talked about that?
she seemed very happy when she and I were working together. Thank you, God. Yeah, that that seemed to work. You know, I've told you when she came in and she looked at the piano and she took her music and she said, What is this kid with the blonde hair? What? She's the piano player?" And anyway,
Well, how did that make you feel?
how did that make me feel? I was scared to death. Are you kidding? I was panic stricken. Billie Holiday was throwing her music at me. And
when did you stop being nervous with Billie Holiday?
when
Or
we
were you ever
played our
nervous?
first song together, I mean, it worked out. What can I tell you? It worked out.
Yeah, you said something in your book that I thought was really amazing as an accompanist. That it was working with Billie Holiday that actually made you a perfect pianist in that sense. That
Yes, I am going to brag. I am going to brag. I
brag for
think
me.
I'm a very excellent accompanist. I think I'm one of the best because I do listen to singers. And also, of course,
Mhm.
I'm lucky that I can play in every key there is, which not everybody can do.
Yes,
And
that's right.
that makes life quite easy, and why I've always had a chance at jobs. Um, I'm going to tell you something, and I can't say the words because, okay, so now when did this happen in New York? About 3 years ago, 5 years ago, the bass player went, I'm trying to think. Anyway, I, I was living I
Oh,
moved
that
to
was 40, 50 years ago. That's when you were
40
young.
years ago.
When you were young.
No,
Before you met Mike.
No, I was
She's
not
young.
young. Anyway, anyway, we lived in Italy and we've lived in LA and we lived in Hollywood. We've lived in a lot of places. Anyway,
Hmm.
so I had moved from I guess from somewhere. Anyway, I went to this club and it was the first night there, and the bass player said to me, "Who did you F to get this job, honey?" And I went, "Huh?" Yeah, that was my first night at the job. And I said, I think I ignored him. I didn't know till many years later that was, what's his name? He's since passed away. He was the bass player for one of the great jazz, anyway, in the club. So that was an interesting thing. So, but I
So,
got my
so we,
jobs because I could play in any key.
well, I love that. As a singer, I think it's wonderful when you can find someone who actually can play any key because you never know what you have to move to, and
Exactly.
it's
Exactly. That's why
just.
I always worked. I always had a job.
And I love that you listen. You wrote about listening, and I can imagine with a Billie Holiday that you really have to listen to where she's going, and I can see her
Oh,
changing
well,
keys
most
from night to
singers.
night. That's true, but listen, there are people out there who are not mindful of that. They're trying to be a star themselves, and so they're not really focusing on the goal, which is to make the
Yes,
story heard through the
I'll
music
agree with
and
that.
work with. Yeah, so when I was reading that about you, I was like, oh, I love her. So thank you for being
Am
who
I
you
going
are.
to ever get a chance to play for you? Are you going to be
Oh my
singing
goodness.
for it?
I will be so honored. Are you kidding
No,
me?
I would. Yeah, think about it. Let's work on that. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's talk about what you're doing today. Because when we
What
started our
I'm doing
conversation,
today.
what are you doing
Today
today?
I'm all. Denise made me up. I'm all, and I'm sitting here waiting to be zoomed, and they're zooming me, and I guess this is it.
And you're
But
going to
tell me
Father
about what you're working
Oh
on
no! Oh
actively.
no! Father, no. Father,
Father Boyle.
Father Boyle. Do you know who Father Boyle is? Okay, you
Tell
should.
me.
Father Boyle is a revered figure here. What else can I say? We should send you the
Father
thing.
Boyle
Yeah.
created Homeboy Industries.
Okay, Father Boyle created Homeboy Industries, which deals with guys that are in prison.
That
And
got out of prison.
what?
So this is
Uh,
Father Gregory Boyle.
It
Yes,
is.
yes,
It is.
yes. And
Yeah,
he's-
and it's the inmates that were released from jail that nobody would give jobs to. Father Boyle created a bakery and gave all these young men and young women jobs to get them back into the workforce and to
Okay,
show.
now we come to my husband, who, what?
No, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, well, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
now we come to my husband who thought, God, all these guys getting out of jail, they should have some music. And how about their children? And my husband established Homeboy for Children, and he found
So
instructors.
let me get this right. Let me get this right. Your husband, Mike Stoller, and Father Gregory Boyle came
Right.
together to
And they
create.
established Homeboy Industries, right?
No. They established Music Heals.
Music, oh yeah, the name of it is Music Heals. And so they came
It's a
out.
program that gives lessons, music lessons to former inmates and their children, their families.
Are you hearing, Denise?
I'm
No.
hearing all of that. I'm hearing all of that.
You
So,
are.
so your
Anyway,
husband and
my
Father
husband-
Boyle.
That's what my husband thinks about. I mean, my husband, don't start me on my husband,
And
because
today
that'll
you're
be
going to-
5 hours of what a darling guy he is.
Today you're going to Father Boyle's book signing.
Okay, Father Boyle just wrote a second book, and later today we're going to that. Incidentally, I got to show you what I'm wearing.
Oh, I
For
love it.
some reason, last year, a couple of years ago, I lost my appetite, and I eat, and I don't cook anymore either. I used to be, I was known, sorry, as a great cook, but so I've got, all my clothes are huge on me, and I'm wearing this down to Father Boyle's having a book signing. So when I'm done with you today, we
You're
will
gonna
go
go
down
with-
to the book signing.
That
with
is awesome.
Father
Well, you know
Boyle.
I love colors. You can see all the colors behind me. So you look beautiful.
Good. Yeah, well,
and
it's
so-
great. You know about my background in clothing?
As a matter
You
of
know-
fact,
you
I
don't know-
do. I know that, Miss Corky, you changed your name, and that
Well,
you come from.
Sure, I did. But I mean, my family, see, this is why God has been so good to me. My family had a chain of clothing stores all over. And
That's right.
incidentally, my dad was one of 10.
Wow.
So, so I grew up in the clothing business, and
That's right.
that was the last thing I wanted. But when
You
we
had your own store.
when we were here in Hollywood, I opened Corky Hale. And of course, everybody rushed in. I did a tremendous business. And that was the last thing I wanted, was the clothing business. But it was a tremendous hit from the day.
Miss Corky, you have brought so much joy in my life right now. Just first of all, knowing your connection to Billie Holiday, knowing just your passion
Good.
for music, your
Good.
passion
Good.
for
Good.
justice for people and everyone else in the world, and I just, it's been a
Thank you.
joy,
Thank you.
a complete joy, complete
Thank
joy.
you very much. Thank you.
So, and thank you and your husband, Mike Stoller, for the amazing work you're doing with
And Denise.
with Father Boyle. And thank you,
With the
Denise, in the
home-
background, who has helped us to basically get through some information. And
God was good
it's
to her.
been a
I
joy.
have to tell you, Denise lived with a lovely guy for 19 years. And about 3 years ago, she said to all her friends, listen, put on some old clothes and we'll meet you at this restaurant tonight. And we'll just have a drink, all of us. We got to the restaurant and she said, I've called a minister and we're getting married tonight. So after 19 years of being together, they've been married now for 3 years. And God has been good to her too, because she's got a darling husband. So that's the story. We're ending with nice things, okay?
Yes, but here's my final nice thing, because we talked about it earlier.
Okay.
Again, I'm excited
Okay.
to be here and be on behalf of North Carolina Theater, talk about the new show that's coming up on Billie Holiday's life. That's going to be starring our
Right.
Angela Robinson, and it is Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. It's going on from November 5th to the 14th. I know you don't like to fly.
And this is in North Carolina. This is in North Carolina.
North
Oh, if
Carolina,
only I
North Carolina
liked
Theater.
planes. Only
I
liked
know,
planes.
but listen, if you send us your good wishes, the
Yeah.
same as you sent for Audrey McDonald, I'm sure.
Believe me,
it's
I'm
gonna-
sending you more than good wishes. I'm sending you everything wonderful, and hope that God will be as good to you as has been to us. Okay? That's the
Oh, thank
nicest
you.
thing I can say to you. Okay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Corky, for joining us today. We have been honored to speak with you. Thank you, Yolanda, and for all these insightful people contributing to community conversation today. We look forward to seeing everyone at our production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Join us next time for an engaging community conversation surrounding the themes of our upcoming production, Sister Act.